The following episode might contain sensitive content that you might not be comfortable listening to. This will include topics such as self-harm, suicide, alcoholism. If any of these things or anything related might disturb you, please proceed with caution or click off the video now.
What makes you so afraid to be yourself? Your honest, true, open self. Hello, my name is Hazy, Who Killed Hazy, and welcome back to yet another episode of Only Rainy Days podcast. A little bit of open transparency before I actually get into the topic matter. I am super late on recording this episode. At the day of recording is about 4 a.m. on the 23rd of June, which means if you somehow, or if you just do happen to listen to this episode the day it comes out, I record this episode about 18 hours, or the start of it is 18 hours before it actually comes out, which is significantly late of a recording for me. I usually try to record at the very least a week in advance, if not two. But to make up for it, for once I actually written down more about what I want to talk about this episode than just the title. Assuming and knowing me, because I'm starting to have a track record here, I wrote down more than just the title for this. Originally, I just wrote down sexuality coping, and I was just going to leave it at that. But I actually wrote out a little bit of a skeleton for this one, because this is a topic that I hold very true to myself, or it feels different to talk about this more than anything else. I can sit here and talk about things that have bothered me either now or in the past, things I'm afraid about in the future, and I never felt the need to go into, recording, thinking about it out loud with like a game plan. I just needed one word, a couple words, and I knew where to go from it. But this is a topic that has constantly left me perplexed due to how complex it is to me. So I'm gonna just start from the top and we go from it. I want to talk about my history. I want to talk about my own history to ease into this. Happy Pride Month, by the way. If you feel comfortable identifying as someone within the LGBTQ plus realm, or you're even in questioning, keep going. I'm proud of you. And also don't feel too forced to apply a label to yourself. And that goes especially for those in questioning. There's no rush and there's no reason to, be out there and tell yourself and others that you're lesbian, gay, bi, pan, ace. There's no reason. Just allow yourself to feel as you feel when you feel it, and we move from there. But my road with my, I guess, non-heterosexual feelings is, I don't want to say rather complex, but one that I would have never expected had you told me when I was 8, 9, 10 years before that and years afterwards that I'd be a bisexual male. I would have never believed it, honestly. And it's less from that doesn't sound right. I grew up homophobic, quite honestly. Not the type to rally in the streets and say that, you're going to go to hell and all these terrible things are going to happen to you just because you're this way. It wasn't a cause that I was willing to die for, scream from the top of my lungs. But, I grew up in a type of environment that fostered homophobia. And if they were even fully homophobic themselves, I don't know. Most people I grew up with, I haven't heard from, because I grew up with people who were older than me. When I think about running around with friends, it either goes with the people who I knew within schooling, and whenever I was out of school, I want to hang out with people who were my brother's age. So they were always 4 years, if not older than that. in comparison to me. So when I was 8, 9, I was running around with my 13, 14-year-old brother. Maybe there was other 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, maybe even 16-year-olds. There were some people who were just turned 18 that I would see every now and then. And I grew up with them. So maybe even for the older people, they have changed their ways, changed their thoughts. And maybe the things that they were saying when I was younger was a reflection of who they were, and maybe that's still who they are. I hope they come to terms with the realization that there's no reason to really, why do you care so much? That's always something I've been a firm believer on, at least in the last couple of years, when it comes to all the hatred that gets pointed towards people within that community. Why do you care? Okay, this person wants to date this type of person. If you're not interested in them as a person, then why do you care so much? But I grew up making a lot of weird jokes, hearing a lot of weird jokes and statements, and ones that are not particularly accepting of those with quote unquote different views. Always a go-to for my friends at the time, me and my friends at the time, to be blunt with myself here. We would always say something along the lines of fruit. You know, you're a fruitcake, you're a Fruit Loop. We would just go back and forth, and you know, it gets worse than that. But that's the surface level. If someone does something weird, something bad, your first thought is just be like, oh, that's gay as fuck. Like, it's just like, it's with everything. With everything that is seen as not normal, isn't like you decide to throw it at people because it's just like, oh, this is quote unquote not seen as correct or acceptable or right by a general media. I'm gonna just throw it at you because I know you're not gonna accept that term. That's the whole point of it. You say something to someone just to hurt them because you know that they don't identify or necessarily even agree with that sort of mindset, with that personality trait. So someone does something stupid, someone does something wrong, someone does something you remotely don't like getting fouled out in basketball. You just say, that's gay as fuck. And we threw it out. And I threw that shit out a lot. And it became commonplace. It became to the point where it was just my natural being. And I stood so 10 toes down on those jokes that I didn't even stop to actually think individually, how do I feel about these communities that I'm deciding to use as insults, terms to reference to them. And looking back on it now, sitting in a group of people who, at the very least at the time, were straight males, and presumably, again, I've lost all contact with them, basically, are still straight males. I don't know, but I think one of them is actually married now, because it's been a while since I've heard from any of them. I think he's married, at least one of them. They're all straight males, but I look back at the time and the lack of self-reflection, and it disgusts me. And it disgusts me terribly, because there was one kid that I grew up with, elementary school, I believe into middle school as well. Middle school, and I saw them for my first year of high school before I transferred out. I think she still graduated from there. But at the time when I met them, obviously I'm not going to say any names, but we knew each other since elementary school. I skipped into their grade and I met them, and they were a great person, honestly. And I'm not saying it just to save face or anything like that. I couldn't care less about it. I think that wholeheartedly they were a kind, nice person to be around, the one to always try to make jokes and laugh, albeit a little bit of the last person in the room, which I've never been too fond of someone who is increasingly loud, but nonetheless, it was someone that always tried to bring joy into people's lives. Throughout elementary and middle school, not consistently, not to a level in which I believe that me and some of my friends in school went out of our way to bully them, demean them, feel as if they were less than what they are. We used the fact that they were gay against them. So if they ever said something, we ever go back and forward and joke, we would always use that as the knife to hold against their throat, because it's just like, oh, this isn't normal. I mean, elementary school, middle school, this is 2010s. If you know anything about the 2010s, a lot of things were unruly and quite unsavory in comparison to where we are now, 2023. So I made a lot of jokes, or not a lot, but I made jokes. I made statements that I'm not too proud of. And my best friend at the time, and my best friend to this day, I've had a lot of conversation with them lately about almost every time that we have seen each other in the last year or 2 years. We think about her, and we're just like, we really, considering everything that has changed, we really did some fuck shit, and we really came to terms with it, because my best friend is one of the first people who supported me when I finally came out and said that I was either a gay or bisexual man. He supported me all the way in 11th grade, but we tormented this individual, or not tormented, but we made fun of this individual from about 4th to 8th grade, 4 or 5 years of just saying terrible shit. And then 3 years later, we both became accepting. He became accepting of me, and I became one step closer into I joined the community that I once used to just randomly make fun of. And I think about her a lot, honestly, especially when I think about my history with the LGBTQ community. And it doesn't make sense. And that's why I know that if you told a younger me that I would turn out to be someone who has only dated men outside of 1 or 2 stray kisses, has only kissed men as a man myself, I would have never believed it. Because I grew up with such a mindset that didn't, at least frontward facing, didn't tolerate those type of ideals, those types of feelings, that type of everything. I don't want to say it didn't make sense, but it just wasn't commonplace. So I didn't want to challenge my ideals. But I look back on it now. I'm able to look back on it. I came out in 2019, somewhere in there is when I came out. So it's been a solid 4 to 5 years in the making. And even in the months leading up to me coming out, I had a lot, and I mean a lot, of terrible internalized conversations with myself, because by the time that I started to realize that I took a liking towards other males, the quote-unquote joking homophobia started to feel more so real, or at the very least it became real, because I started to realize how I started to talk to myself as I was dealing with those emotions, dealing with those thoughts. And it wasn't a good feeling. I didn't realize. It started to make me question, did I ever start to say these type of things to other people? And is this truly how I feel? Or was I okay with it? I just didn't want it for myself. I didn't know. I spent a lot of nights just trying to essentially cope and try to process the feeling that I'm feeling strong romantic emotions for another guy, another dude. It took months. It took months in some of the worst mental periods of my life. And the icing on the cake during that time period was a very homophobic statement came from someone that I hold to very high regards in my life, and I still do, because they have changed as well, and I've accepted that what they said to me at that time it wasn't necessarily how they felt. It came out very sharp, and over the years, while trying to work with it, they have become a lot more accepting to both me and the community, and I can look past what was said. But when they said it, that was a very strong turning point, for the better and for the worse. What they said at the time affected me very harshly, and that was in response to what they said to me. I said something that eventually led to being involuntarily taken out of high school for a month to go into therapy, to be able to be readmitted into said high school. But at the same time, when they said that to me, my response was very charged. It was very charged, and looking back onto it, it made me realize that I knew that's who I was, or I knew that's who I am at the time. They said something that was against gay males. I said a statement very charged about the fact that what is wrong with being a gay male? There's nothing wrong with it. And if you have a problem with it, I don't know what to tell you. That's a very sweetened up paraphrase version of it. But I can realize that was a moment where I knew what I am. I wanted to be it. I wanted to be comfortable being gay and having any pushback on that idea, especially from someone that I hold to such a strong regard, I care for, love for. It hurt me. It hurt me to a level, a degree that I never felt. And a lot of things don't hit that level of regard. If anything, I don't think anything anyone has ever said to me really hits that level for me, and it never has, and I don't think it ever will, because that statement truly pained me. And again, we worked past it. But after I got out of therapy and my mental health overall started to increase, that's when I became comfortable with who I am. That's when I started to tell 1, 2, 3 friends about the facts, like, hey, I'm gay. I'm gay, or at the very least, I'm bi. I'm still a little bit lost, but at the same time, I don't see the point in putting a label on it. I just want you to know, because I just want somebody to know. I don't want it to come out as a massive surprise. You are my friend. You are someone that I care for. I want you to know, and if this is something that you are not comfortable with, let me know. There are no hard feelings about it. Because with all of my friends, male friends especially, we all make very suspect jokes with each other. You know, a lot of weird things go down, and unless you're in the moment, you just wouldn't understand it. Some things are just said, and everyone just like takes a moment and pauses. It's just like, what the hell did you just say to me? Or what the hell did you just do? Like, some things just turn out, and from an outside perspective, looks like it's homosexual in itself. So I want to tell the people in which I usually make these type of jokes and usually do these things with, that, hey, this is who I am, and should we continue to keep making these type of jokes, I just want you to know that's what it is. I don't feel attraction towards you. You're not my type, but I just want to let you know. And if that changes things between us, or if you're uncomfortable with it for whatever means, please just tell me, and we can just go from there. And luckily, the 2-3 IRL friends that I told that to, they were all very accepting of me, and I'm happy for it. I'm very blessed for it too. I'm very blessed for it. There's a lot of people I have been talking to, hope to continue talking to, that haven't been so fortunate to keep majority, if not all of their friends, once finally coming out to them. Some people never come out, and sometimes when people do, they are met with a barrage, a flurry of hatred for just being who you are, and on top of that, a flurry of hatred for something that doesn't pertain to anybody but the person in question. If you like someone who is the same gender or sex of you, what does that have to do with anyone else? I can understand if it's a male coming out as gay, and they tell their male friends, and they might feel a little uncomfortable making very sexually charged jokes to one another. That's okay, or that's understandable at the very least in the beginning, to be a little bit questionable about how does this affect how we talk to each other. But to cut someone off and to just say absolutely horrid things to them just because they thought they were in a position to be comfortable enough to speak to you about how they feel and who they are, I think it's quite asinine. I think it's quite asinine for sexuality and transgender as well. And speaking of transgender, I don't know where she is. I haven't heard from her for years. But if this episode somehow ever gets out to her, I'm gonna have to name drop her for a moment, because I have a deep level of love for this woman. Mary, if you're out there and this episode somehow reaches you, thank you so much for the time you spent with me on trying to accept myself. Mary is a beautiful woman. I've known her for a couple years. She met me about 1 or 2 years before I started becoming questioning, and we lost contact about a year or two ago. But at the time when I started to question, she was the only person that I was able to talk to about how I felt, and she helped me come to terms with it and understand everything about it. She was willing to listen to how I felt, all of the internalized homophobia that I had and worries about the future and how people might perceive me, my family might perceive me. She did as much as she could have, and we were both young at the time. So she's an amazing person, and I just always want to thank her for it. I really always want to thank her for it. But I still never, but yeah, I always worried about how my friends would feel, how family members would feel, but I still don't speak on it. Honestly, I don't speak on it. I'd argue, I think I don't talk to many people in person, not too many IRL friends. I make my money and I live my life completely online, basically. So I just have some IRL friends from high school before. I would argue majority of my IRL friends don't know that I'm bi, and I think to an extent, maybe some online friends that don't talk enough to me every now and then, they probably don't know that I'm bi either. But I don't speak on it too much. I never did, and I don't really think I will. In the beginning, I told some friends that are very essential to me, friends that I wanted to make sure I didn't lose. So for my best friend since elementary school, and then one friend in high school, I told them when I initially decided to come out that I was bisexual, because I wanted to, it's not necessarily a test, but at the very least, if I was going to feel any pain for losing anyone that I cared so much about, I wanted them to be the first ones to know about it. It doesn't even pertain to them. Neither one of them are my type by any metric, but I just wanted to tell them. I just wanted a little bit of acceptance and just understand the fact that not every person around me would be out to get me based on who I am, especially two friends that I hold to high regards and have made homophobic jokes with, and I've had very quote-unquote homosexually charged joking moments with. It was a nice feeling where it's like, okay, how will this, even if you accept me for who I am, how will this affect how we interact with each other in the future as well? And praise be, it didn't change anything. They're still good friends of mine. We can still have these very weird moments where we have to look at each other and just be like, that's something different you just said to me. Like, what did you just say? You want to do what to me? Like, we can still have those type of moments, and it didn't change. It never changed in the last 4 or 5 years since I've been out to them, at least. Nothing has changed, but I don't see the need to really speak on it with a lot of people. At the very least, if you're curious about how your friends might feel around you, then just have an open conversation about being gay, being lesbian, being bi, being trans, any type of sexuality or identity that you have. Have an open conversation about it with the people around you, without necessarily saying it out loud. So, as an example, if you are transgender and you talk about something that relates to transgender rights or the existence of trans people, and one of your friends says something that is incredibly transphobic about it, then you didn't have to come out to them, and you can understand that they're most likely not one that you should keep within your circle. You don't have to speak on it. On top of it, in general, it has nothing to do with them. It has absolutely nothing to do with anyone. Therefore, I have chosen to never speak on it. It's not because I'm necessarily afraid. Luckily enough, I've always been in a situation where I don't feel as if my physical well-being will be in danger should I speak on it. But nonetheless, I don't believe it is one to truly be spoken on. Or if you want to yell it from the rooftops and let people know, I think that's a wonderful thing. And on top of it, it helps people understand, like, oh, if you're a woman into women, they might have not actually thought they had a shot with you until it was well known that you are bi, pan, or lesbian. Okay, now they know. It can help in some situations. I decided to just let it be. I didn't really want to speak on it. Do what makes sense given your circumstances, especially because, once again, with transgender people, I know that there are some heavy risks at times in trying to truly express yourself. If you are a trans woman and you want to start dressing more quote unquote femininely, some people will do and say some terrible things to you. Which, by the way, massive recommendation, get yourself a knife. Get yourself a pocket knife. Make sure you always stay safe. Even if you don't identify with the community. People are weird. People do fuck shit. And you always need to stay safe. But especially for people in the LGBTQ plus community, I recommend having some sort of weapon, pocket knife, whatever, whenever you step outside. Because even if you believe that you're in an area, a community publicly, in person, that is accepting towards people of your liking, there always might be an opportunity that someone will start to feel otherwise, or someone who feels otherwise has infiltrated the area that you're in. It's always very important to stay safe, wholeheartedly. But I don't think you should really speak on it. I think you should just be yourself. Be yourself wholeheartedly, regardless of how anyone necessarily feels about who you are. You can't make people love you. You can't make people love you. You can't make people accept you for who you are. And it's a damning reality that needs to be realized. At times we find ourselves to hold on to people who we've always held on to. It's hard to let go of friends, and in the worst case situations, even family members. It's very hard to let people go in that type of, you don't make relationships begging to lose them at some point. Every friendship, every relationship, hopefully at least, family members, you hope you never lose them. Loss and heartbreak is a terrible feeling. But if you decide to express yourself and be yourself the way that you want to express yourself and be yourself, and someone decides to express or portray themselves as anything less than accepting to who you are, or at the very least warming up to becoming accepting to who you are, there is no point in keeping them around that close, potentially harming yourself. People who are homophobic, transphobic, and it seems as if they don't even want to try to hear you out, understand where you came from, your story. They don't want to hear and see who you are as a person. They decide to use the wrong pronouns. They decide to just make you feel uncomfortable in your very skin just because you finally had the courage to tell them who you are. let them go. They serve no purpose in helping you become the person, helping you become more than who you are at the moment. They will only serve the purpose of holding you back and reminding you of things that you don't need to really be reminded of, or they'll just keep trying to change you in a way that you don't care to be necessarily changed. I know some people. As much as I still talk about being able to hold all of my friends together when I came out to them, at least I have some people who I had to cut off and keep away from me because of some of the things that they said, whether it be just to me or the community as a whole. I don't want to keep them around. They serve no purpose in making me feel more comfortable with who I am. And if I was to ever bring anyone around that also identifies in that community, what will they say to someone that they don't already have that personal affiliation with? Sure, you might accept me just because I'm your best friend, but if I bring around my boyfriend, if I bring you around one of my friends who happens to be trans, gay, lesbian, what might you say to them? And I actually did have that situation about a year ago. I had a friend who was relatively tolerant, maybe even a little, somewhere within that community himself. So I brought him around some of my friends. A lot of my friends, or a lot of my online friends, fit somewhere between the homosexual, bisexual, transgender area. And this person has met some of my transgender friends, some of the friends that I hold very true to me. But I remember one day I brought in another one of my transgender friends who he hasn't met. I stepped away for about 5 minutes, and when I came back, I realized that I was getting all these different messages about what my friend said to my other transgender friend, because there wasn't that boundary. It wasn't someone that he knew or even cared for, so he just started to speak his mind. So I had to have a conversation, tell him that you can't do that type of shit with people that I care for. And unfortunately enough, because we came to an understanding about, at the very least, how you talk to my friends, I haven't spoke to him since that moment. I think it's the concept of time is far from me, but I believe it's been a couple months now. And I'll always sit here and I'll cherish the moments that we had together when it was existent. But nowadays, I can't say that I really want them to be around, because they have proven themselves, at least in that moment, to be a threat to not only the community in which I'm a part of. They might only be someone that was tolerant of me because of our personal connection prior to them understanding that I am a bisexual male. And if I was transgender, it might be the same way. That friend treated my other transgender friends well in the beginning, and as long as they knew each other. But this one instance showed that he was necessarily a threat to the community or anyone I wanted to bring around. I didn't want to keep that around. It set a tone. I had to cut him off. I'm also not out to a lot of my family members, actually. I think, even though it's most of my immediate family, I didn't want to know. I got outed to them. Outside of my immediate family, no one else in my family should know that I'm bi. It doesn't really pertain to them, and I honestly just don't. I don't want to know what might come from it. I really don't want to know. I feel as if I've heard some statements against gay people, especially gay males, come from people within my family. But I don't know. I actually don't remember. It's been too long, and I was way too young to speak on those quote-unquote memories with confidence. But I don't feel the need to call up every aunt, uncle, cousin, niece, and nephew about the fact that I want to be with men. Like, that doesn't do anything for them to just know. If anything, under my own circumstances, under my own control, I'm going to have to bring home a guy to the family and gauge their response. And quite honestly, being someone who is completely 100% open to being with guys in the same way I'd hope any woman that wants to be with women, any person that has decided to become who they are truly and transition into being either a male or female, I hope you hold the same regard in which it doesn't matter if we have blood between each other, if we share blood and DNA. If you do not accept who I am, I cannot be around you. It goes for family. If I bring another man home for Thanksgiving, and some of the aunts, if my aunt, who I hold to high regards and I love and I've been in contact with and I used to spend all my nights with in the summer, if she looks at me and says things of disgust because I decide that I want to love another man, I will never speak to her again. And there is no question about it in my head, because I will not let any person speak down on me, especially just because I figured out who I want to spend the rest of my days with, who I want to give my time to, who I want to love. It does nothing to them. It does nothing. Why do you care so much? What harm am I doing to you because I'm a guy kissing a guy? Because I am a girl kissing a girl? Because I have decided to transition and become who I am, not who I want to be. If you transition, you're not who you want to be. You are who you are, and you have decided that you can portray it and show it in its truest form. What issue does it have to any person that isn't yourself? And even then, I hope it's not an issue to yourself. It doesn't matter to anybody else. It doesn't matter. And you can make the argument of, oh no, my family might look at me and say, Hazy's gay. Hazy wants to live the rest of his life with another man. What does that mean about the bloodline? One, I can still have children and they can still be in the bloodline. It doesn't stop anything. But two, you know how many people are in this family that can still preserve it in the case that you believe that I might be practicing some case of heresy? And overall, once again, why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you feel the need to make me feel so terrible, so uncomfortable in my skin? Make me feel as if I'm practicing such a great crime of sin just for motives you want to see through yourself. Why are you forcing that on me? Why do you want me to be what you want me to be? Why can't I be myself? There's no reason to just keep these type of people, and especially these people with these ideals around you. It just suppresses you. It suppresses who you are, suppresses the advancements you try to make to your life. It ultimately makes you a worse, more bitter person the more you listen to people who don't accept you for something as simple as who you want to like and who you wholeheartedly want to be around. It's as if they want you to be around people who make you miserable or who you actually don't care to be with. It's as if they want you to be miserable and be less than who you truly are inside. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So I say all that about distancing yourself from threats to who you are as a person. Once again, whatever you might be, lesbian, bi, gay, trans, anything within the LGBTQ plus community. I guess let this just be a moment to say support your friends, support your homies, support your family members, even if they are one to come out to you. Let the people around you who are within that type of space feel comfortable enough for coming out to you, and they can talk to you about whatever. I'm not saying you have to break your regular boundaries super hard to listen to them. Just because you have a trans homie doesn't mean you have to listen to all 25 of their, failed relationships in the last month. If you wouldn't do it for anyone, don't do it for them. But at the same time, if it's someone that you care about, and on top of it, again, people, even if you don't identify within that community, why do you care so much about what they do? Just be there for them, especially if it's someone that you care for, quote unquote, prior to recognizing who they truly are as a person. It makes no sense to be a friend to someone realizing that they are lesbian and deciding that you should never talk to them again. Them being lesbian, most likely 90% of the time, to be honest, has nothing to do with you whatsoever, unless your friend comes out with the sole purpose of trying to be with you. But I'd like to argue that's a small percentage of situations, so let's not talk about that. Not for now, at least. But then you should support your homies. You lose nothing from it. You gain, I'd like to believe you gain a lot, because you have your friends still. You still have someone that you care for. They're still the same person. They're just more themselves. And I think that's it. I think that's really the main point. Just do your best to just be there for people, especially within that community, because there's a lot of public scrutiny towards the LGBTQ, especially within the month of June, and at the very least, or especially for the trans community. I by myself is no means transgender, but I have a lot of transgender friends and I care for them. And as much as I make jokes about Pride Month, I am worried about a lot of my trans friends during Pride Month, because there's a lot of crazy people outside who trying to do shit. And overall, I've seen it in a lot of my friends, especially within the last year or so. I've seen a lot of friends truly blossom into who they are, coming out by any means, gay, bi, pans. Even I have a friend that's even ace, and I don't know why I got so excited thinking about it, but I've seen a lot of friends just kind of start to become more and more of who they are, and especially becoming comfortable enough to express who they are to me. And that is a feeling and a blessing that I don't want to play around with, especially because I know that doesn't affect us as friends. Are you gonna hop on the game or not? That's amazing, and I'm there for you. If you have anything you want to talk about, I'm there for you. But at the same time, even in the situation where someone comes out to me, it has nothing to do with me. That's amazing. Thank you for telling me. Are we getting on Valorant or not? I don't have to lose you as a friend just because you are finally showing me who you are. That's not a significant change. Or it's a significant change, but it's not one that should make or break a relationship. You're still the homie. I hope you forever be the homie. I never want to lose you, but I just need you to recognize that the one thing that I need you to hold true to yourself in general, and if you're a part of the LGBTQ community, you need to hold acceptance of who you are. Happy Pride Month.